Planning Ahead, a tele-workshop by the Alzheimer Society of BC. So with me to do the presentation is Chad Rumson from the Dementia Hotline.
And Mark Lebrecq, the Provincial Coordinator of Programs and Services at the Alzheimer Society of BC. Today's agenda, Planning Ahead, involves several factors. We're going to look at the importance of early planning. We have a document called ReadySet Plan that some of you may have already seen and be familiar with. That's really helpful in this. We'll touch on driving cessation and a little bit about navigating the system.
So why are we talking about this? So the importance of early planning. If it's done early, the person with dementia can actually have a chance to participate in planning their treatment, everything that's going to happen with them. The sooner you can do it, the sooner is more capable of making decisions. It's allow a person to express their wishes. There's also an issue with legal competency. If you go and have legal document, even a representation agreement, you have to be able to, at some point, to be able to know what you're doing in terms of judgment, and it could be done fairly easy, usually in a lawyer's office. Something to consider is safety issues. If you're living in your house, in particular by yourself, when do you want to move out? What are the issues? What are the signal that it's time to do this? Driving is a big issue. It doesn't seem like much now, but once you get to that point, it's a big issue for most people with dementia and the caregiver. There's also the issue of protecting your own assets, especially if you have a house or a business. We have a timeline here. There's no dates on that, and it just look at the different activity stages of dealing with dementia. So planning for safety, we have financial planning, living arrangement, end of life, even funeral. So you do this at your own pace, and everyone's going to be a bit different with that. For some people, the whole illness goes very fast. With other people, it goes slower.
I think just to go back to that timeline too, Mark, with the ReadySet Plan document, if you do download it or if you've already seen it, it can look a little overwhelming when you first have a look at the document. It's a page double-sided with all sorts of different categories. Certainly start going through those categories as soon as possible, but try not to be overwhelmed with it. It's a good guide. Start getting things in place so that you can just then enjoy your life and not have to worry about all the little picky legal and medical details that might come up.
Yeah, that's good advice.
So with the ReadySet Plan document, we're going to be looking at it in two ways, and the first way is financial and legal affairs, and the second is healthcare and personal affairs. Now with financial and legal affairs, there's several things that you'll have to be looking at. One is power of attorney. There's bank accounts, for example, having bank accounts with joint bank accounts with both your names on them. Things like the disability tax credit, which is T2201, that's important to have in place. Taxation benefits, CRAT 1013, which is a form for authorizing a representative for income tax matters. If you don't have this form, it can be very difficult to get any information on the person's income tax matters. Looking at insurance, house, life, car, long-term care insurance, which is something that's being talked about increasingly. Getting some of those factors in place.
And regarding the taxation benefits, we have a handout on that and give you some information on where to go and to get the benefits. There's also a lot of handout on power of attorney, representation agreement, and other document, and the tool that we talked about, the ReadySet Plan too, with the workshop. So the power of attorney, it's a legal document. So as power of law, you can actually go to the bank and say, well, I got the power of attorney. I can withdraw money, for example. So give someone else, someone that the person with dementia choose, and ideally you choose that with the caregiver. And it could be the caregiver, it could be somebody else. Somebody the power to deal with legal and financial affairs. So talking about paying bills, having access to the bank account, can you withdraw the money, investing money, selling your property. If you have a business, this is a must as soon as possible. And again, if the person with dementia is involved in that at the early stage, you can really tell, this is what happened with the business, with the house, with my will, with the bank account, this is how we're going to do it. So you have all the power in the world at the beginning of the illness if you can work with somebody to make a power of attorney. And this does not cover the healthcare decision, by the way.
And just to note, too, you want to have an enduring power of attorney. That word probably won't be in the document. It will have different wording saying something about how it's still in effect if the person can no longer make their own decisions, or wording to that effect. But you have to have that wording, or else it doesn't cut it. And you do require a lawyer or a notary public for these documents.
Yeah, and as much as possible, if you have a choice, go see a lawyer that has experience with that.
Yeah.
Another document that we're going to talk about is called the representation agreement. Same thing, it's a legal document, but this one deals with the health decision. And it can deal also with some basic legal affair, like bank account and that kind of stuff, nothing too complicated. You can have this, but the goal of this mostly, it's about healthcare. Again, it's legal documents, so go see a lawyer for that. Also, you're going to be talking about end-of-life choices, so you're talking with your caregiver, and the person is going to be representing you, and you can say, oh, this is what I want, and how far do you want to push people to keep you alive? Are we talking about a ventilator or not? Do you want tube feeding or not? So you can think about those decisions right now, and having this person making those decisions for you when you'll no longer be able to make decisions.
A lot of peace of mind with that, isn't there? Because then you know your wishes will be respected because you have delegated your decision-making to a person you trust, but also for the person making the decision. It's so hard making those kinds of decisions. A little bit easier when you know that it's exactly what the person wants.
Yeah, and the guilt involved in that, you know, like one of the biggest one is like, when do we put the person to a long-term care facility, or if the person is at the end of life, and we're talking about life and death situation here, and that's a lot to expect from the caregiver.
Yeah.
Also, it helps with if you have different people try to make decisions. There's one person who's going to make that decision.
Concentrates it in one person instead of the conflict. So there might still be conflict, but there's one person that has that right to do that.
Some of the tools we suggest also in terms of the healthcare decision, personal affairs, having this little document, it's on the handouts, it's called a medical profile, and it's basically just a little booklet about the different medication you're on, allergies, other health condition that you might have. So if you end up in the hospital in an emergency, the person with dementia, they're going to look at the caregiver, the person with them, and they're going to be looking for that kind of information for fast and accurate services. If you have that with you, this is great. If you don't, it might be difficult to remember the name of different medication and so on. So make sure different people got it too. Reviewing up housing options, there's more than one type of housing. There's different level of service that comes with that, like from long-term care facility to somebody coming at home, or assisted living. So talk about this with home and community care if you have a care worker or somebody to help you with that. And some people, they only go and visit places and have a good understanding. Funeral planning, not the best discussion, like the most fun, but if you can do it now, again, less pressure on the caregiver and the survival, that they don't have to deal with that in a time of crisis. And this is just a little thing about keeping some of your important paper together and make sure somebody knows where that is. So they're all together, so ID number, financial and legal advisor, who are the person to connect if something happened, health professional, something in terms of the health prescription, significant phone numbers and addresses if needed, email address, vacation of document, asset and insurance policy, banking detail. Don't forget password, the different website that you go. So if you can have all this information in one place and making sure that at least one or two people know about it, so it's easy to connect with the right person at the right time.
So many of these things require time and pre-planning, don't they? But they save time down the road, and they certainly save stress if you can have them in place. A wee bit more about representation agreements. As Mark said, this is a legal document. It allows you to stay in control if you're the person with dementia, even beyond the point where you can actually make your own decisions, and it makes it easier for your friends and family. You're appointing someone to act on your behalf for health care, personal care, and routine financial and legal affairs. There are two types of representation agreements. Standard representation agreement, which is Section 7 of the Representation Agreement Act. You can actually get that type of representation agreement even if you are at the point where you would not be deemed capable of making your own decisions. But the other one, the enhanced one, the one with additional powers, which is Section 9, you still have to be competent, just as with the power of attorney. So the Section 7 can be a little bit of a fallback position if you haven't done any pre-planning, but it has somewhat more limited powers than the others. Further details, NIDA's Personal Planning Resource Center and Registry has a wonderful website, and you can contact them by phone as well. Now, sometimes planning isn't done, and there's all sorts of financial decisions that have to be made, or planning has been done, but there's a whole pile of conflict within the family as to decisions being made and people disagreeing with decisions being made. This is where comity of the person, or comity of the estate as well, there's the two types, end up being pulled into play. This is not the preferred choice. It's a court thing. Who wants to have to go to court when it's involving someone you care about, family, friends? It can be extremely divisive, but as well as expensive. But it is an option. You're involving the public guardian and trustee, and ultimately, hopefully, there will be a resolution that is in the best interest of the person with dementia. But it really, if you can avoid doing it this way, it's cheaper and it's easier on the soul to avoid it.
So that's Plan B.
Yeah, definitely. Or Plan Z. I'm not sure if it's even Plan B, but...
Driving. So we mentioned this before. This is a huge impact on people with dementia and caregiver in terms of safety. Why it's an issue is because the effect of the illness on the capacity to drive is obvious. So reaction time with a person with dementia, peripheral vision will be affected, depth perception, night vision, problem-solving ability, which is like, as much if not more important than everything else. It's like, what do you do in a crunch? Somebody hits the brake or somebody come in front of your car, like you have to make quick decision using judgment and things that happened, before, and you learn from that. With dementia, you're losing all of this, and your capacity from driving safely will deteriorate quickly. So some of the challenges, when you ask the person with dementia to stop driving, they have a feeling of they're losing control of their life. You have to rely on other people to help them, and they have to ask this other people's schedule. It's the inconvenience. It's also the inconvenience of the family caregiver. If you're relying on your husband who has dementia with the car to do the grocery, you're losing that capacity, and now it's going to be more difficult, the bus, the taxi.
And some people, it's almost beyond inconvenient. If you live in quite a remote area and you can't drive anymore, it can be extremely difficult for whoever is in the family if there's nobody else with a driver's license.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I think early in the illness, doing something to actually even consider. If you're living far away, you're losing the car, and there's nothing else, there's no buses, it's going to be expensive by taxi.
Yeah.
Maybe you should consider also as one option, as many options, as moving to a bigger city where there's a lot of services and SkyTrain and so on around you, so it's actually easy to move around without. So that could be part of the conversation. Just one more detail about driving is people with dementia are involved in accident twice as many times as other people of the same age. So it really shows that. Those are reported accidents the time that. So the danger grows with the illness. One of the issues, obviously, is like the people with dementia, they lose the insight. So have the conversation early, because later on they don't have the insight that they no longer a good driver. They still think that they're a good driver. And even if you have the conversation early, and they say, yes, I will stop, they might lose the insight at that point. So discuss early, talk about the all aspects of driving, including the psychological aspect, the emotional aspect, where people connect with their car in a way that, that's part of who they are. They've been driving for 40 years. And if people can give away their license freely by their own will, it's going to be much easier for everyone.
So just a wee bit about navigating the system. Now, the health authorities provide several services. I'm going to really just touch on a few of them, but emphasize the main ones that you might potentially be dealing with when you have dementia in the family. Home and community care. Now, home and community care is responsible for things like assisted living, residential care, respite care, day programs, adult day programs. This is what you will mostly be dealing with. Home care is another aspect of it. So home care, adult day programs, respite care, care facility placement, those will be the main ones that you'll be dealing with home and community care. Assisted living, a little bit problematic, because one of the criteria for assisted living is that the person has to be able to direct their own care. So sometimes it's possible for the person to go into assisted living early in the disease, but it can be difficult, and it's not a permanent solution. It's not a permanent place for them to stay, assuming that their dementia will progress. There's also services provided in terms of hospice and palliative care. Palliative care, basically you're looking at comfort care. So this is where the person has, whether it's dementia and other medical conditions, dementia alone, but there is no expectation of them getting better. And so palliative care provides the comfort care. It's not going to be a cure. There's some health-related transportation, mental health, addiction services, hospital care, public health services, Aboriginal health services. These are all under the various health authorities. We have the 5 health authorities in the province. But again, home and community care services will be the ones you'll be most dealing with when you've got a person with.
In one of the services you just jump over, it's respite. It's a great service for caregivers, but also for people with dementia taking a break from each other. And you have so many days every year that you can use for respite.
Yep, there's 30 days a year that the person is eligible for, and that can be taken in different ways. So that can be all in a chunk, or it can be, some people will take, for example, one long weekend a month, so that the caregiver gets 3 days off or something like that once a month. A couple of weeks here, a couple of weeks there. It's variable, depending just on the availability of space. So it's one of those things that if you're thinking you might need that kind of help, the sooner you contact the case manager at Home and Community Care, the more likely you'll get the time you need, so that, and the time slot that you want.
Yeah.
So that you can do that.
Yeah. So if you are a caregiver, you're going to be needing some respite for sure, because it's a long-term care problem.
And next slide. So when you are navigating the system, how do you do it? Basically, one of the things that's really important is asking lots of questions. It's confusing. Different health authorities and different offices sometimes have slightly different policies. Probably availability of services is one of the factors, caseload, that kind of thing. So, you know, read up about them online, but go to your specific office and ask questions. Don't be afraid to speak up. You are advocating for your family member, and they rely on you to ask the questions and to be there for them. Good idea to take notes at meetings. That way you've got the information. It's not a case of you not trusting the people you're dealing with, but it can be confusing. So if you've got this stuff written down, it can make it much easier for you. Be polite but firm. Probably most of the people, if not a huge majority of the people you're dealing with, are in this job because they care. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way when you feel your needs or your family members' needs aren't being taken into account. But use the case manager, use the people within the system that you're dealing with as allies in your family member's care. You're working together to provide the best care for your family member.
That's right.
And be persistent.
So in summary, as much as possible, involve the person early in the process, especially if you're lucky enough to have a diagnosis of dementia early in the illness. The person can really participate in the planning of their own finance and also their health care. Using tools like the ReadySet Plan, you can look at what we need to do. Again, the trick is like focus maybe more on where you need legal competency to do those things while you have it right away. But start planning now for the future. Don't delay. Have those conversations that you need to get. Using the representation agreement, really, if you have the person with dementia, making clear that what you want, what kind of services you want, what kind of services you don't want. As Jen was saying, if you're dealing with a mental health professional and you try to get services, the people out there, they have the tools going to help you find the service you want. So to quote somebody, you know, was it be hard on the problem, but be soft on people. I'm going to leave you with this one. An ounce of planning is worth a pound of care. So we have tons of handout with this one, so have a look, and hopefully this was useful.